Hello, hello. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for joining my podcast. It's such an honor. I never take it lightly. Every time I invite someone and they say yes, it's always an honor. So thank you so much for joining.
Of course. I'm glad to be on here. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. I think when we spoke a few weeks ago, I think our stories are so powerful. And it's funny because I think we related in so many things, like even like you have a brother, I also have a brother, the way we grew up, the cultural similarities were there as well. And one of the things I kept thinking was our stories and the season when it comes to mental health that we both went through.
Mhm.
When I see your story, I see your side as you being the supporter. And then from my side, I have gone through the mental health. So I think when the two stories collide together and when we tell our stories, it's going to be something so powerful. So let's just dive right in. So let's take it from the beginning.
It's so much. I know I joked with you the last time when we talked that I think we could have just turned on the camera then and just
Yes.
let it record then, and that would have been a whole podcast in itself. So it's funny about that. But yeah, we connected in so many ways, and it's like you said, there's so many similarities. And I myself, for those of you, many probably don't know me on your podcast, of course, but I have my podcast called She Who Thrives, and it's She Who Thrives. It focuses on women who face different adversities in life and became successful in their own right. And the reason why I was doing that was because I wanted to break out of my shell with so many things that has happened to me in the past. It just put me in this box that I was fearful of everything. It started off with me going through a divorce, and then through that divorce I wanted to heal from that divorce and heal from so much from the past that I turned it into a book called Loving a Bipolar Bear. And in that book is just a lot of the mental illness, the struggles I had to face with someone that I was with that had to deal with a lot of mental illness and the struggles behind it and addiction and everything else that came with it. And I seen how it correlated with not only me but him, and also where I come from with my parent and having a parent that had struggles to this day with mental illness, but in a Hispanic household is never admitted. So
Yes.
coming from that old school mentality and then having to deal with it with the ex-spouse and seeing like, oh my God, I know this. I was trained so many years for all of this. So it comes down to what they say, I'm a trained empath, and
Yeah.
I can see when someone, or I can feel when someone's feeling a certain type of way, or there's a lot of negativity in the air, or whatever is going on with a person. I can see it by the body language, by facial expressions. I can tell. But that was just based off of the trauma that I went through growing up, and then it trained me to be in the relationship that I was in, and then I was able to navigate myself in that relationship, and honestly in any relationship now. But I took that trauma and I'm just turned it into positive ways in my business and with my clients. And I can tell when my client is down, and I can help them like to make sure that they're reaching their goals. So yeah, with mental illness is something that was taboo to speak about, and now it's encouraged to speak about it now because we never know who we can be helping.
Yeah. And it's funny that you say that because when we were talking, I think I said I was a functioning addict. Like, no one was able to tell that I was an addict. I was popping at least 10 to 20 oxycodone a day.
Yeah.
And I was a cutter from the age of 15 all the way until my mid 20s. And in my mind, in my world, I was functioning because I knew how to hide it very well. I would wear long sleeve. Hot summer days, you would catch me with long sleeve or just a whole bunch of scrunchies in my arm to cover my cuts. But I think you were like, well, I definitely would have noticed
Hmm.
because you were trained. So
Hmm.
it's
I was
just very
very,
interesting.
yeah, I was very vigilant to that. I was very vigilant to seeing what's on people's arms, seeing, and my ex spouse, and I tell people I don't like to tell so much of his story because that's his story to say. But what
Right.
I seen on my side is I would look at his arms. I would look to see if there was any unusual scabs or anything like that that I had to really pay attention to. At this point, he tattooed his forearm so that way he can try to cover up whatever scars that he has
Mm.
on there. And also it got to a point of doing his face too, so I had to pay attention
Wow.
to everything. And it's very difficult. So now when I see other people and I see certain marks on their arms, it's like I already know. I kind of I gravitate towards them and I just talk to them. I don't try to force anyone to tell me, but usually it does just naturally happen and they naturally tell me. What I've learned in the process of why people do it, there's other alternatives to be able to help with that. From what I know is cutting is just a release of endorphins, and you want to
Yes.
continue doing that so that way you can have those endorphins. So one of the other ways, or two other ways, that many may argue that they shouldn't even suggest this, but if you are going through it, is taking a handful of ice and just hold it, and
Mm.
the sensation of that ice, that being so cold in the palm of your hand, releases the same endorphins that it would be if you were be cutting. And then
Oh,
yeah,
that's
so just taking
interesting.
that one pile and just holding it in there. It's just, if you feel that, it's the same. I don't know if I want to say rush because I've never been a cutter, so I don't know how that feels. But that's the release of endorphins is the same. And then the other thing is taking a rubber band or a
Yeah.
hair band that's tight, and then just
Mhm.
when you pull it back and it smacks against you, that also releases the same endorphins as if you were cutting.
Yes,
So
I've heard of that one.
those are the two that were suggested so that way you can stop being a cutter until you try to work through everything else so that you can eliminate cutting, period. But I've seen that. I've seen the all three, and I think the one that had worked best in his point of view was the rubber band, having a rubber band on his wrist. Um,
Yes.
so that's the one that worked the best for him. You know, me seeing it's sad. It's sad because you never know if the person's gonna cut and they're gonna cut deep enough to do something else.
Yeah, and it's funny that you say that because in the midst of it, you're not thinking of that. Someone as a cutter myself in previous years, you don't think about that. You don't care because some people are like, "Oh, you're so selfish. Like, what if you cut deep enough to,
Mhm.
to die?" And it's like we're not thinking that far ahead. We just, like you said, we just want that pleasure, that satisfaction to feel that pain.
Mhm.
And it's crazy. For me, what worked was therapy, a lot of therapy, and just keeping myself busy. And like I say, for me, every day, it's almost like I have to wake up and not force myself, but I just have to like push that thought to the side. It's a work in progress for sure, and every day is a different day. And
Mhm.
when those thoughts start to come into my mind, I just have to either stay busy. That's why I'm always busy and have like 100 things going on. And at the time, I was in high school going into college. I was like, did a minor in child psychology. I became a tax accountant. I was doing like 3 degrees at the same time just to keep busy. So that
Right.
was my way of kind of like blocking it. I was like, I have to keep busy because if I have downtime, these thoughts just start coming in. And
Yeah.
even now, like when I'm a tax accountant, as you know, and we have our high season and low season. When we're in that low season, I have to pick up a project. Not because I know I'm gonna cut again, but just because I don't want those thoughts to start creeping in.
Hmm.
So I think it's just like a trauma thing that I'm
Hmm.
like, okay, I'm not busy during these months, so I have to do something. I have to pick up a project to be busy.
That was the other similarity for us because we're accountants, and then I do taxes too.
I
So
know, yeah. And then we're so creative. It's like, why
yeah.
are we sitting behind a desk crunching numbers?
Right. And I think too, I think about it, and we talked about it before. The reason why I went into this industry was because it was what was going to sustain my life and keep a
Yeah.
roof over my head and all of that stuff. But then now I'm at the point of doing so much creativeness, and that creativeness is what helps me mentally because being during tax season is very rough on us. And not a
Oh,
lot of
yeah.
people realize that. Although yes, I was on the support side of a person dealing with that mental illness, but I also, from everything that I went through in my past with my parent and with my ex, I have my own issues that I have to struggle through and get through. But then during tax season, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
So then after tax season, you're like in this silence of what in the world is happening, and it's not normal.
Yeah.
So you start looking for those projects. And
Yeah.
I'm there too. Like right now, I'm doing the course and creating the course for women in the beauty industry. And it's because it's after tax season. So I always do something after tax season so that way I can roll it out. And it always rolls out around my birthday in November. So last year I rolled out the podcast, I launched the podcast and all that. The year before, I think it was the book. And then now it's just this course for women in the beauty industry. So every year, pretty much trying to do something so that I can stay busy. So that way I don't think about certain things because yes, divorce is, even though you're not supposed to be with a person, divorce it takes a toll on someone's mental, period.
Oh, yes, a
You start
hundred
to ask
percent.
so many questions about yourself and what's happening and stuff like that. And then recently I had my surgery. I don't know if you and I talked about it. I had a tumor removal from my head. So
Yes, yes.
I had that, and then I want to say a month later, my fur baby passed away. So that took a mental toll on me as well because um I have PCOS, and that deals with a lot of health issues, and one of them is anxiety and depression. So how I control it is working out and being busy. When I had the surgery, I couldn't do that. And because of me having insulin issues from my PCOS, the surgery took a lot longer to heal from than
Mhm.
normal. I was starting to go through that depression stage. And then my fur baby passed away, which I don't have any human babies because I have difficulties having kids from my PCOS. So he was my child. That was my everything. So when he passed away while I'm already going through a depression and anxiety and everything, it just made it worse.
That must have
So
been so hard.
it was
So how Yes,
very,
sorry.
very hard. He passed away in April 2nd. So it's very recent. And these past few weeks I've been struggling trying to keep up with myself mentally. And because I seen what my ex has went through, because I seen what my mom went through, I think having all of that education helped me in this process. So it's like everything happens for a reason, and those lessons was what is helping me get through now. They put me on some antidepressants so that I can go to sleep. But I
Mhm.
already knew I do not want to stay. I don't want to be hooked on it because I know what that is to be hooked on
Right.
something and to be dependent on something. So I'm like, I'm going to take this just to help me just for a few days, but we're going to see how I feel. If not, I'm going to try to do it as naturally as possible. But it's very difficult to try to do it the natural route. It is so difficult because your
Yeah.
mind is playing so many tricks on you. You don't know if what you're feeling is true or if it's not true, if you're being too dramatic, if you're not being dramatic enough. You're just going back and forth and dealing with those emotions. And it's
Yeah.
like you think you're getting over something, and then all of a sudden you see a memory, and then you start busting out crying, and then you're thinking, why am I crying? Why am I crying? I'm supposed to be over this. So it's such a battle that not everybody's going to know. And then I was going through it while tax season was happening still. So
Oh, wow. That must have been rough.
yes. So and then this
Wow.
people, not everybody understands it. Not everybody was compassionate about it. So it's been a whirlwind.
And then how do you deal with that? Because you have always been the person to support someone going through mental health issues. So now that you're going through it on your own, do you have support system? I know you said you moved to Orlando and your family's back in Chicago, if
Yeah.
I'm correct.
Yeah.
So how do you have a support system? How are you going through it with or without a support system?
Honestly, I self isolate a lot, and that's the trauma
Mm.
response from when I was a child of going through, abandonment issues and things like that. So I self isolate, but I try to be as open as possible on my podcast. So if anyone sees it or if you've seen it, I've cried on there and trying to be as vulnerable as possible. So that way, anyone that has gone through it or is going through what I was going through in the moment, know that you're not alone. You're not alone in this process because just like I said, like with these different emotions, you're afraid to speak about it because you don't think anyone's going to relate to you or people
Yeah.
are going to just have past judgment on you. So
Mhm.
it's hard. It's hard. And I get that. So for me to know that I don't like to express it to certain people, I just, you know what? I'm going to have this. I have this platform. This is what it is for. So I want people to know that, like, Janelle's being as vulnerable as possible because many people, even my clients, be like, she's so strong, she's so confident, but you don't know what the person's really going through in the inside, you know? So
Yeah.
I really wanted to I think my platform has been my go-to support in a weird odd way because it's not like someone's there holding me and hugging me saying you got this,
Right.
but
Yeah.
me being vulnerable for other people, I think that's what's helping me. Knowing that, okay, I have this bad day, but tomorrow's going to be better. Tomorrow's going to be better. And looking at how far I'm coming. And it's natural. I had to tell myself it's natural to cry for a loss. Like my
Yeah.
baby's my was my baby. I only had my two fur babies. My other one passed away about 3 years ago, and then he just passed away in April. For 18 years of my life, I've always had a fur baby in it. So now it's my first time not having a fur baby. So it was a lot of changes for me. And I had to tell myself it's okay to cry. It's okay to release this. It's
Yeah.
okay to not have a good day. It's okay because you're always trying to, especially being in corporate worlds in the past and all of this, you have to be so prim and proper and happy go lucky, and you have to be so confident. So you have this in your head, you have to be such a perfectionist.
Yeah. And
And
it's almost
coming
like you have to justify yourself.
right.
Like, okay, why am I crying? Like, I have to justify it to the world as to why am I crying or why am I feeling like that. And it's also, I think, a lot has to do with the way we grew up, right? The culture that we grew up in, like you said at the beginning. Mental health was not something spoken about.
No.
And God forbid if I told mom, I'm depressed, she would be like, go clean your room. Like you're just bored. You just have nothing to do. Like go clean or come help me do something. And I think for me, I heard a lot at the beginning when I tried to speak up, like I remember hearing a lot from different people, you're being selfish,
Hmm.
especially when I started cutting myself. Like, you're being so selfish. Like, why are you doing that? So, because of that, I just kind of like hid, and I was like, I'm just gonna be a functioning addict and a functioning cutter, if that's even a thing, and I'm
Yeah.
just gonna cut myself and not tell anybody because I was afraid. From that moment, I was like, I'm afraid to speak up because I'm speaking up. No one's helping me. They think I'm just joking. So I think the way we grew up has to do a lot with the way we respond.
Of course. And that was your way of self isolating, keeping that to
Yeah.
yourself and not asking for that help. So because I knew that that's what comes from it, I did not want to self isolate 100%. I want it to be out there. I want it to be known that I'm going through this. I even told my clients, I'm going through this. I can't do your things on time. There were it was up to them if they wanted to go somewhere else and have someone else do their taxes. I'm okay. I know I lost quite a few clients and some business, and that's okay with me. And it comes along with, of course, money issues because then now you're not making the money that you're
Right.
making. So all of it came together, but I had to be like, Janelle, it's okay. It's okay. Your mental comes first. And I was still recovering. And I have up to, like, they say maybe about a year for it to completely, fully recover. So there's certain things that I can't do. I can't be out in the sun and things like that. But knowing that and being able to get back into the groove of things of working out and still mourn the loss of my baby and all of that, I just wanted to make sure. And I have, my boyfriend that's supportive with things that he doesn't understand it all either. But of course, he comes from the same background we came from, that you just don't speak about
Yeah.
things like that. And but he's been as supportive as he can, as much as he understands it. Then I have my assistant that is there, that she's with me almost all the time, so she understands it. She's supportive with it. And I have a select few friends that I do speak about it, but it's more of, let's speak about this, but let's go out and do something. Like, let me get out and let me surround myself with some people, so that way I'm not, I don't want to say, I don't know the correct terminology of it, right? Because it's just slipped my head, but I just don't want to be crying at home all the time,
Right. Yeah.
wallowing in it, and then not really doing anything about it. So
Mhm.
I have stopped the antidepressant. I try to do the natural way, which I use this thing. I seen it on TikTok. It's called,
Our lovely TikTok.
yeah, Nello Super Calm, something like that, and it has like ashwagandha in it, vitamin D, and some other things. So I was drinking that twice a day, and that's helped a lot with my mood. So I've seen that, but then my doctor keeps on, her words are just like ingrained in my head. Do more things that you enjoy.
Mm. Yeah.
So I was like, all right, do more things that I enjoy. What is it that I really truly enjoy? So that's where I'm at, of really, that's why the whole course came about too, because I like teaching. I like motivating people. I like when they succeed, I get a kick out of seeing people succeed. So that's why I'm doing the course thing, to help other people get to a certain part. Plus, business, entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial depression is a thing. So it's like it goes hands in hands, and I want to be able to be that support system for many people that are trying to grow their business. That's like, okay, I'm enjoying this part of it, as opposed to just sitting at the desk and just crunching numbers.
Yeah.
So, and the other thing too is going to the beach, being by the water, being under the sun, getting that vitamin D, and really enjoying it, being around people, and having the energy of other people, that positive energy, just
Yeah.
helps me get through my time, my day, and everything. And then, going through the depression, and you have that stress eating too, you gain weight, so you look at yourself, and this is where I'm like 20-30 pounds heavier. So I'm like, so yeah, it's just, but I don't want to say I'm thankful that he went through the certain things, but I'm thankful that I was there to learn from him with
Mhm.
all of the struggles, because it's getting me through what I'm going through right now, without
Yeah.
having any like of the bad habits or anything like that. And I get it when they told you you're being selfish, because sometimes I felt like that. Like, how
I know.
can
I was just gonna say, did that ever cross your mind being his support system where you thought, my gosh, he's just being like selfish? Because I've always wanted to hear that side. Like,
yeah.
why would you say that?
Um, there's times that you do think of it. I do think of it. I do think like you were being very selfish. It was a relationship, you and you completely disregarded me, and you put so much stress on me. And I think that's where it was because I was being that sole breadwinner, and the stress of still, because being Hispanic, that mentality of still being catering to your spouse. I'm working
Yeah.
all day, sole breadwinner, come home, making sure that our apartment's clean, making sure he ate, making sure I ate. It's like all of it was on me. So I felt that, yeah, you're being selfish. That's how I felt until when I went started going to the his psychologist with him. He had to teach me a lot. Like, it's not him. It's not him. He's battling this and it's out of his control.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, how you said you were functioning, he was as well. So he was able, I don't want to say manipulate, but he knew how to get around the doctors and get around certain things where they didn't see
Mm.
him the way I seen it.
Yeah.
So I seen the effects of all of the medication. I seen all of the cutting. I seen all of this stuff that put so much stress on me. And they didn't see that. They only seen the version that he was giving them.
Right. Yeah.
I was so frustrated until I'm like, okay, he's smart. I have to outsmart him. So I had to come up with that plan to see how the doctors are going to really see how he acts and how he functions. But yeah, it was hard because I really wanted him to understand it from my point, but he couldn't even understand it from his point. So how was he going to understand it from mine?
Yeah. I was just gonna say, if he didn't understand it from his point, there was no way for him to comprehend it from your end. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's when I'm like, okay, he's not being selfish. Yes, this is difficult what I'm going through. How can I help him? But as much as I tried and tried, I had to really come to the conclusion of, unless he wants help, I can't do anything to
Mhm.
help him.
Yeah, and
Um,
that took me a lot. That took me a while to learn because
mhm,
I think I got to a point that I was like, why is no one helping me? That was always like my biggest complaint. Why is no one helping me?
mhm,
Until I really hit rock bottom and I was like, well, no one's helping me. One, because I'm a functioning addict. No one knows that I'm going through these things. I'm not speaking up,
mhm,
and my healing journey can't be on anyone else. It's on me. I'm the one that has to put in the work. So why am I waiting for someone to knock on my door and be like, okay, Cynthia, come on, let's go to therapy, let's go get you help? And that takes a while. That's a journey to come to that realization that no one else is going to save you but yourself.
mhm.
And once you accept that you need help, then that's when other people can jump in and start helping you.
Yeah. And because of that, again, I was able to learn in my situation. So I'm in a long distance relationship. We live in two different states. For a little bit, he was here, then he leaves, and then he comes back. But in between, when he's not here, it's like I'm at a very sad point, or I'm still dealing with the loss of my baby and all of these things or whatever. And I did the mistake of almost saying, well, you're not here to help me.
Hmm.
I had to be like, it's not his job to help me.
Yeah.
I have to help myself. So then it's like, okay, Janelle, because I was on that other side before, I can be like, I can really relate to him. It's not his job at all. So I have to tell myself, okay, what do I have to do to make me happy again? What do I have to do to be okay again? And I started telling myself, and he tells me this, it's okay, little by little. You'll eventually be okay, you'll be back to yourself again. And
Right.
with those words, it's like, all right, Janelle, you did this today. Be proud of yourself that you did this today. And little by little of me regaining that strength and being okay, like, oh, all right, the house is empty now. I don't have these pitter patters around the house anymore. It's okay to be sad about that. It's okay for all of this. So I start to take the steps of what's going to make me happy. Nobody else is going to help me. Nobody else is going to make me happy. It's my responsibility to make myself happy. And then once two people come together, we're both happy, we share that happiness together.
Right.
Um, and that's where I'm at right now. And I would not have known that unless I wouldn't have done it myself from back then. So because of that experience of me going through that with my ex-spouse, I'm able to sympathize now with my current relationship. So it's a beautiful thing if you really take the lesson out of it all.
Yeah.
And I'm sure with you, like you never know what is the reasoning behind you going through what you went through, and really seeing those lessons, because you never well look what you're doing now on the podcast. You never know who you
I
can be
know.
helping right now. Um,
Yeah.
so I see it. I see that all the time. I think about, I question, why did I have to go through that? Why did I have to go through what I went through with my mom? Why did I have to go through so much stuff? And it's like, because this is what I needed right now for myself to get through it on my own, or not so necessarily on my own, but get through it now as an adult going through all of these things. I'm fortunate enough not to have gone through any cutting or anything, but those are addictions, and addictions come in
Yeah.
different forms. And one, I can honestly say, for a little bit, when I was going through certain emotions, and I talk about this in my book too, that I want to say promiscuous for a little bit when I was younger. And then once I was going through my divorce, I really didn't care. So I was going on dates here, dates there, but it was me masking what I was truly feeling.
Yeah.
And I had to come to like a hard stop on it. Like, no, don't do this to yourself. So that's, I me learning the hard way with all of it. Now I see it as a blessing for myself.
Yeah. I always say, what would the 15-year-old Cynthia need? And this is why this year for me, I'm like, I'm going to try my best to heal internally and start my podcast. It's been on my mind, oh my God, probably for like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And every time I like start, I'm like, nah, who's going to want to listen to me? Who's going to want to listen to my story? And this year I was like, I'm just going to go for it, because what would that 15-year-old Cynthia need? What did she need? Like,
Yeah.
imagine if she tuned in to this conversation. How would that have changed,
Yeah.
my cutting journey? So
Hmm.
that's what also keeps pushing me. I just always keep going back to that. And I know there's someone out there that's going to pick up this podcast, and maybe they're in the midst of a mental breakdown, and we're going to help them with this conversation that we're having.
Yeah,
Yeah,
most definitely. I had those same doubts too when I first started my podcast. I'm like, who's really gonna want to hear this?
I
Who's
know. And
really
it's
gonna tune
crazy.
in? Yeah, and it's like I have zero followers for the podcast. Now it's like there's on YouTube is about 170 subscribers on YouTube. There's about
Wow.
over 3,000 views on all of the videos on a weekly basis. Then on TikTok, there's about my highest viewed TikTok is probably about 39,000 views on TikTok on one of them. So it's like if it touched one person, at least one person, I know it made a difference. And
Yeah, yeah.
I'm okay with that. So that's why I keep, and sometimes I think about it like, okay, I'm starting to get tired. Should I continue doing the podcast? I'm like, when I say that, it's like boom, I get a message from someone. Thank you so much. You don't know how much this means and things like that. I was like, you know what? there's a purpose behind it. So that's why I keep on doing it. So yeah, you keep on doing it because you just never know. You never know who you're gonna reach.
Yeah, and it's like it's like a mind fuck.
Mhm.
Cuz cuz that happens to me too. Like when I have like a list of people I'm like recording with, and I always get like those doubts. I'm like, you know, if I start talking, if it's going to be like awkward, like what do I say if like we pause in conversation? And it's just like you just have to go for it, because like you never know. You never know who needs to listen to what you have to say. And another thing that I kept saying to myself, there's so many podcasts out there with similar conversations. So
Mhm.
it's like what makes someone listen to my podcast versus your podcast, right?
Mhm.
And I'm like, well, my story and your story is completely different. It might be similar, like we both might be going through depression, but the story behind it is completely different. So
Mhm.
that's another thing that I've had to learn, that I've had like, oh, well, who's going to listen? Because there's so many podcasts out there talking about sisterhood and talking about these raw conversations, right? We hear that all the time. But then it's like, well, the conversations and the stories are going to be different, and it's going to impact very different.
Yeah, it's just like when I speak with you and then I speak with somebody else on a different podcast, the stories that come out or comes out differently. And
Yeah.
then you also have to think about, although they're similar, there's no one like you. You are
Yeah.
you. So you
Yeah.
bring yourself, be that authentic self. That's what I had to tell myself. Like, no one else is like me. Like I went through the things that I went through, but I still see things in a positive light, and I still try to motivate everybody, and I try to do everything possible to heal myself so that way I don't let anyone and I don't let anyone anger me to control me. And I want to
Mhm.
let that be portrayed in the person that I am. So when people hear me, they get that, they understand that, they know that. So although they may hear a subject similar, they're not going to get the same exact conversation and the same
Yeah.
person, because there's going to be a lot of people, and it's not to knock anybody else, but there's some people that are monotone on their podcast. I know I'm
Right.
not a monotone person. I speak with my hands, and that's one thing that I do a lot. Or I laugh. I tend to laugh when I get nervous. So people are gonna see
Right.
that my personality come out. The other thing is I get tongue twisted. People are gonna hear that too. So I'm like, you know what, this is me. So that's why they're gonna tune in. Maybe, being tongue twisted and saying certain jokes or whatever is gonna make them laugh, but help them get through it. And
Yeah.
you know, that's what I had to keep on telling myself. And I still go through it. Like, I'll look at other people's podcasts, man, I could have said this, I could have said that, and how, hers is much better. She has so much more views. But then I got to think about it. That person's been in the industry a lot longer than I have.
Yeah.
I haven't even been on doing podcasts myself for a year yet. In September, it'll come out to be a year. So it's like I still have some time. And these other people have probably 4 years ahead of me. So it's okay. Like, I'm okay. I know it's gonna creep up. That imposter syndrome's gonna go in there, and it's like, ugh.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
no, it's just like, try to surround yourself with other people that have the same issues. And I think it's that support system that we need to give to each other, because I tell
Yeah.
everyone, we're not competing against each other. We're not. We're
Right.
just gonna help each other out to get to that next level.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. Do you have issues with someone helping you? Like, do you have a hard time accepting other people's help?
I used to have that issue. Now I do not. And that just comes along with being a business owner, being that entrepreneur. You have to learn how to delegate certain things to other people, because you have to know when you have certain weak spots, and someone else can come in and do
Mhm.
better at certain tasks. Or just like with when I was creating the podcast, I knew I couldn't do it by myself. And even though I would have tried and try to figure it out by myself, I didn't want to be overwhelmed with it all. So it's like, all right, who's going to help me get to this, create all of this? I want to make it look great. I want to be successful in this area. So who can help me? So I ask now for help in different areas because I don't want to overwhelm myself anymore. I'm at that point, like I want to give my all to certain people, and my all is what I'm doing, and I can have somebody else take over the task that I no longer want to do. So it's not that
Yeah.
I don't know how to do it. I don't want to spend the time on doing it.
Right. Yeah, I'm learning that because that's one of my biggest, I would say, weakness. So delegating, I do not know how to delegate because I'm such a perfectionist.
Yeah.
I'm like, I want to do it on my own. And even like on work, like on my, being a tax accountant, that always comes up in my review. Like, you need to start delegating because you're at a certain level, which you shouldn't be doing this. Like, you need to push it down and have someone else do it. But then my perfectionism comes up and I'm like, but they're not going to do it like I do it. So I'm like slowly trying to learn that. I'm trying to learn that. So you have to give me a few tips.
It's difficult, but when you see, okay, for me, at least for me with my business, I look at it as, is this going to bring me money, or is this other task going to bring me money? So if this task of responding to emails or whatever it is, if I can pawn that off to my assistant, then why not? So that way I can focus on
Right.
bringing in that money. So me taking 5-10 minutes to respond to this email, or taking 5 and 10 or 10 minutes to make this $2,000, whatever it was that I have to make, which one am I going to choose? That's where
Right.
it's like, okay, what should I give to my assistant? And yeah, I struggled with that too, because a lot of the times, whoever I did delegate something to, things fall through the cracks. And it's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So then that's where problem solving comes into play. And it's like, all right, how can we get this fixed? But once I fix it, I sit down with the person. This is what happened. This is how you should have done it. Now we have to get this fixed. And this is, so it's just, it's going to be a learning curve. Now it's just like, all right, I put this on you. This is how I trained you how to do it. Make sure you write it down so that way we can avoid any issues in the future. But at the same time, I had to let them fail at something, or let them make those mistakes, so that way
Yeah.
we can learn from them. Because honestly, that's how I learned, was making the mistakes I needed to make to get to where I'm at.
Right. Yeah. Very true. So tell me about your businesses because I know you have a few. You're a tax accountant and then you have a few things on the side besides your podcast. So let's dive into that.
So I have my business called JPP Accounting. And with the accounting, I do accounting for small businesses, and I do taxes for small businesses. So of course, all of the accounting stuff, I go into tax season and I do it for my businesses. But then I also have one-off clients that come only during tax season, and I do their taxes. So I'm an enrolled agent, and whoever doesn't know what enrolled agent is, we're federally licensed with the IRS to be able to represent a taxpayer in front of the IRS. So we can represent in all 50 states. So it's different than a CPA, but very similar to a CPA when it comes to taxes and all that. And then the new adventure is called CFO, which is trademark is
I
pending.
like that. I like that name.
Thank you. So, of course, it's a fractional CFO company, and I'm focused on women in the beauty industry, and it's an all woman staff. So that's why it came with the she, and then and what we do is we handle all of the fractional CFO work. So budgeting, making sure they're keeping track and keeping them accountable with all of their KPIs and all of that. So that's where we have to help them scale their business and continue growing. A lot of business owners, especially in the beauty industry, their biggest problem is not having the handle on their financials, because they're focused on working, whether it's their hair, makeup, skin, lashes, whatever it is. That's their specialty. So they don't know how to deal with the financial end, or they've gotten taken advantage of by other people in the industry because they don't have the knowledge of that. So I do that, and I work on with them one on one, whether it's going to be a weekly phone call, monthly phone call, to hold them accountable, go through all of their financials and everything, so that way they understand it, and it comes from someone that basically speaks like them, so that way they're not intimidated by someone that's so business minded and business driven, where the terminology is just in the financial world, as opposed to
Right.
being able to speak to them in their language. So that's where CFO came in, and that's those are JPP owns CFO, so it's all under one umbrella, all on that part. Then I am the author of Loving a Bipolar Bear. It came out, I think, 2 years ago now, and that's just a book about myself and what I went through dealing with people in my life that had mental illness, and just the effects that it had on me on the other side as a caregiver. And then, like you said, the podcast, we have the podcast called She Who Thrives, which is under the She brands, because it just goes hands in hands. And it's about women that have faced different adversities in life and made it through and became successful in their own right. So I bring on different women, different walks of life, whether they're therapists, coaches, wellness coaches, entrepreneurs that they've gone from zero to made it really big. So it's all different for different walks of life, to help with like motivation and letting other people know that you can do it as well. So it's a fun one. But because I came from nothing, and I had nothing from ground zero to where I'm at right now, it's like now is my time to give back to everybody. So in my business, I really want to continue giving back. That's what I thrive off of, is helping others. Because, like you said, it was hard for us to ask for help.
Yeah. Sorry, I think it got cut off, but we're back. I know you were doing your last piece on you're an author of a book, and then I think we just lost you.
And then I'm a host on the podcast She Who Thrives, is about a podcast about women who face different adversities in life and made it through, and became successful in your own meaning, in your own right. I come from nothing, and I made it to where I'm at, into a 6-figure company that I'm focused on getting to 7 figures. And I'm doing everything possible now to give back as well, because I thrive off of that. I thrive off of helping other people. And that's something that I've always enjoyed. But when you're building something, it's very hard to help other people out while you're building, because you need money. You need money to be able to sustain certain things, sustain certain lifestyles, be able to grow a business. Having to help people while you're doing that was very difficult. But now where I'm at in my business, that I'm fortunate enough to be where I'm at right now, I want other people to be helped. And with that podcast, you can hear women that have been millionaires, women have, or coaches, women who have done different things, friendship consultants too, like at my age, because I'm in my 40s, having difficulties getting new friends is very difficult. Having giving that helping hand to other people is just my way of giving back, because it took a long time for me to get to where I'm at. I was in my late 30s when I finally was able to break through the 6 figures, and it was hard. It was hard when I had to make a lot of mistakes. So now it's like, okay, if I can help you avoid those mistakes, then why not? So that's
Right.
the other part with SheFO as well, all under the She brands. And it just goes hand in hand with it all. So I'm excited with everything that's happening.
That's awesome.
Oh, and
You
then the
are a
other thing was,
busy bee.
yes, the other thing was the course that I'm
Oh,
doing.
yes, yes.
The course I'm doing is it's also part of SheFO, where it's there's going to be, I've heard it before. Many women in the beauty industry may not be able to afford me one-on-one, so but they want my services or they want my knowledge, so I'm putting this course together. So it's everything that I do with my clients that I deal with on a one-on-one basis, but I'm doing it all in the course, so that way you can do it. A person that doesn't have the financial means to give me on a one-on-one can do it on their own as self-paced, but it's going to be a group session as well. So for 3 months they're going to be able to have access to me to talk, and I could hold them accountable to building their budget out, how they need to build it out, but also me teaching them the basics of the financials of accounting and profit and loss and balance sheets, so they can know how to read their financials to be able to build their budgets and plan for their future. Also making sure that they take out money for taxes and all of that stuff, because that's the other big issue in the beauty industry is especially if they're solopreneurs, that they're making this money, but they're not planning for the future, and not taking out enough money for taxes. So every year they're getting hit with this huge tax bill. So
Yeah.
this course is going to be all of that, taking those steps of accounting, taxes, and then budgeting, and being able to scale their business based off of the knowledge that I give them. So I help them for 3 months to go from zero to making a full budget for their business for a whole year. And then hopefully they have that knowledge and they continue doing it every year.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. And I'll include all this in the show notes. I think what you're doing is amazing. We
Thank you.
need more of you. Because, like you said, a lot of people, my husband does very similar. He works with a lot of small business.
Hmm.
He does a lot of financial planning with them where he'll analyze their company and if he has to restructure them to save on taxes. So he does that a lot with small business. And you would be surprised the amount of people that one have no idea when he says like, okay, so where's like your QuickBooks? Like give me access to your QuickBooks.
Hmm.
The first thing they say is like what is that? And he's
Hmm.
like, wait, how do you keep track of like your books and
Accounting.
records? Yeah, like how do you keep track of your accounting? And it's crazy. And then like you said, they get hit with this big tax bill because they're not putting money aside. And of course they have no idea. So I think what you're doing is amazing. Keep
Yeah.
doing what you're doing because we need more of it.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you.
amazing. Yeah. And then I have one last question for you. We always like to end it with spill the tea, where
Hmm.
I ask you one question and then you're just going to spill the tea. So, my question to you is what would you tell your younger self? If you were to encounter your younger self right now, what would you tell her?
My God, I just posted a picture of this morning on Instagram, and it was a picture of me in my 30s, my early 30s, and I'm 43 right now. In my early 30s, and I was trying to learn how to rollerblade. And growing up, I did roller skating. Roller skating was our thing. Rollerblading was not. Rollerblading came later on. And so I'm trying to learn how to rollerblade. But in this picture, you see me with elbow pads, knee pads. I had a brace on my hand, so just in case if I fall, I broke my fall. And looking at that picture was exactly what I needed to tell myself, and I could tell myself, my younger self, that now don't be afraid to fall. Don't be
Mhm.
afraid to hit that concrete and scrape your knee. Don't be afraid of it, because that's how you're going to learn. That's how you're going to,
Mhm.
you know, don't prevent yourself from hitting that first time, because then you're going to learn from it and you're going to keep on going and keep on going until you really know how to rollerblade. So that's the same thing now with life. Don't be afraid for whatever step that you're going to try to take. For me was entrepreneurship. Don't be afraid to take those steps, and don't be afraid to fail, because with
Yeah.
failure comes success. The failure is what teaches us. The mistakes are what teaches us to be such strong individuals and keep going and keep going. And I kept on going until I learned. Now it's hard for me to stop. I can rollerblade, but it's hard for me to stop now. Like, I know entrepreneurship and it's hard for me to stop. I'm going to keep on and keep on. So yeah, that's what I would tell myself from, my younger self. Don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid to fall.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and if anyone who's listening, whatever dream you have in your heart, it's for a reason. Go
Mhm.
for it. Try to shut down all the noise that we get, all the negativity, and just go for it because it's in your heart for a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining. It was a beautiful conversation. I'm going to put in the show notes all your socials, but if you want to shout them out, please do.
On Instagram, I'm as Boss Lady Nell, Nel with just one L. On TikTok is Boss Lady Nell with two L's, Nell. And then for the business Instagram is Your Sheerful. And then I think that's about it for social media. And then for my website is Janelle BP. So it's JANELLBP.com. And then from there, you'll be able to see everything else that I'm doing.
Yes. And then your book, where can they find your book?
Book is on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, anything online, you'll be able to find it. And it's called Loving a Bipolar Bear.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us.
So thank you for having me.
Bye.
Bye.